If you thought America's biggest challenges were hidden behind closed doors, think again. There's a place where despair roams freely, where life collides with chaos, a place some call the City of Zombies. Welcome to Kensington, Philadelphia. You don't need a Hollywood film to witness a dystopia. It's here, on the streets of Philadelphia. Open-air drug markets operate in broad daylight. People inject themselves on sidewalks in full view of children. Trash piles up in alleys as broken lives wander aimlessly. It feels like another world. But this is America. How did we get here? How does a neighborhood transform from a thriving industrial hub into what many describe as a living nightmare? And more importantly, is there any hope left for Kensington or its people? Today, we're peeling back the layers of this crisis, unveiling not just the history of how this happened, but also the heartbreaking stories of those who call Kensington home. Because behind every haunting image is a human being. Stay with us as we explore the untold story of Kensington, Philadelphia, America's city of zombies. To understand what's happening in Kensington today, we need to go back to its roots. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, there was a time when Kensington was the backbone of Philadelphia's manufacturing industry. Textile mills and factories brought prosperity to the area, earning it a reputation as a hard-working, blue-collar neighborhood. Its streets were lined with factories producing textiles, tools, and machinery, creating jobs that attracted hard-working families from all over the region. But like so many industrial towns, the collapse came swiftly. By the 1970s, factories were shutting down as manufacturing moved overseas. Thousands of jobs vanished almost overnight, and the people who could afford to leave did so, seeking opportunities elsewhere. Those left behind faced dwindling prospects and growing poverty. With economic decline came urban decay. Vacant buildings became hotspots for crime, and as disinvestment grew, so did hopelessness. Kensington's identity as a vibrant, hardworking community was replaced with something much darker, a neighborhood forgotten by time. Today, Kensington is one of the most visible epicenters of the opioid crisis in the United States. The open-air drug markets here operate with brazen audacity. Dealers openly sell heroin and fentanyl in broad daylight, while users inject or smoke without fear of repercussions. The story of Kensington today is inseparable from the broader opioid crisis gripping America. In the late 1990s, pharmaceutical companies flooded the market with prescription opioids, often downplaying their addictive potential. Communities already struggling with poverty, like Kensington, were hit the hardest. When regulations tightened on prescription painkillers, many turned to cheaper and more accessible alternatives, heroin and later synthetic opioids like fentanyl. Kensington's location near major highways and its already struggling population made it the perfect breeding ground for this epidemic. By the 2010s, fentanyl had flooded the streets of Kensington. This synthetic opioid is 50 to 100 times more potent than morphine, making overdoses alarmingly common. Dealers began mixing fentanyl with other substances, creating deadly cocktails that trapped users in a cycle of addiction and despair. What makes Kensington stand out is the open-air nature of its drug markets. Dealers operate out in the open, and the availability of drugs is almost disturbingly easy. For many, this neighborhood became a destination, not for opportunity but for addiction. The nickname City of Zombies isn't just a metaphor. Many of those battling addiction here seem to lose their humanity, not out of choice, but as a side effect of powerful synthetic opioids like fentanyl and xylazine, nicknamed tranq. These drugs don't just destroy lives, they erase identities. Walking through Kensington today feels like stepping into a post-apocalyptic world. Beneath the elevated train tracks on Kensington Avenue, you'll find people slumped against walls, needles scattered on the ground, and the air thick with despair. Local businesses struggle to survive amidst the chaos. Families living here face unimaginable challenges as they try to shield their children from the harsh realities just outside their doors. Imagine sending your child to school, knowing they'll walk past scenes of addiction and violence every day. The people caught in this crisis are not just statistics. Take Maria, a former nurse who fell into addiction after a workplace injury led to a reliance on painkillers. Or James, who grew up in Kensington and now finds himself homeless, battling demons he never thought he'd face. Their stories reveal the human toll of this epidemic. For some, Kensington is a last resort, a place where they can find drugs when all else has failed. For others, it's a trap they can't escape. The cycle of addiction keeps people tethered to this neighborhood, even as it takes everything from them. The question on everyone's mind is, who is responsible for this tragedy? The answer is complex and multi-layered. The government's failure to provide adequate mental health and addiction services is a significant factor. Decades of disinvestment in urban neighborhoods like Kensington left a vacuum that crime and addiction filled. Law enforcement, too, is caught in a difficult position. Crackdowns on drug markets often push dealers and users into neighboring areas, spreading the problem rather than solving it. And while some officers genuinely want to help, others see addiction as a crime rather than a public health issue. But it's not just systemic failures at fault. The stigma surrounding addiction keeps many from seeking help, and the drug dealers profiting off this misery bear a heavy share of the blame. Ultimately, there's no single cause for Kensington's decline, just as there's no single solution. Amidst the darkness, there are glimmers of hope. Community organizations such as Prevention Point Philadelphia provide critical harm reduction services like clean needle exchanges and overdose prevention training. Their work saves lives every day. Then there are the recovery stories like Sarah, who spent years on Kensington streets before finding help and rebuilding her life. Her journey proves that recovery is possible, even in the bleakest circumstances. Efforts to revitalize Kensington are ongoing. From grassroots initiatives to larger government plans, many are working tirelessly to bring change to this neighborhood. It's slow, it's messy, but it's progress. Kensington, Philadelphia is a stark reminder of what happens when we turn a blind eye to suffering. It's a tragedy decades in the making, fueled by economic decline, systemic failures, and the relentless grip of addiction. Kensington is more than a headline. It's a reminder of the challenges we face as a nation and the resilience of those who refuse to give up hope. But the question remains, what are we willing to do to stop more cities from becoming the next Kensington? But amidst the despair, there is a flicker of hope. The stories of resilience, the community efforts, and the possibility of change remind us that no neighborhood and no person is beyond saving. If this story moved you, share it. Talk about it. The first step to solving a crisis is awareness, and together, we can make sure Kensington's story isn't forgotten. Subscribe for more stories like this, and let's bring these crucial issues to light.